Welcome to the Accidental Experts podcast. I'm your host, Bryce Hamilton. I'm a licensed clinical social worker and a child and family therapist. I have been in practice for over 15 years, and I'm also a mom of 4. So I know the challenges both professionally and personally. I'm so glad that you're here today to grow your parenting toolbox. Please come as you are and be ready to learn. My goal is to make you the accidental expert so that you can raise healthy humans. Hi guys, welcome back today. I have an all-time favorite returning today. Her name is Mandy Grass. She is on Instagram as the Family Behaviorist, and she is going to talk to us about how to apply the behavior breakdown that she gave us last time into specific behaviors with kids. We're going to talk about lying. We're going to talk about sibling rivalry. So put on your listening hats. We've got some information to download. With that, let's get to Mandy.
Thanks so much for having me again.
Yeah, you're welcome. Okay, so let's talk about, I have 4 kids, and so we often have sibling conflict, and you know, it's hard because, you know, it might be one pair and then another pair, and then they mix it all up, and so it can be so hard to help siblings navigate each other. So what suggestions or advice do you have around sibling conflict?
So I have a couple of ideas. We have 3 daughters, and so we have like a 3-prong approach to sibling conflict. First, they need to tell the person. Second, they need to take some space. And third, they need to ask an adult. The rationale being, daughters especially, like I feel it's important that they advocate for themselves. Mm-hmm. So if my oldest is annoying my middle, instead of just coming in saying, Mom, she's annoying me, or she did this, or she did that, really advocating and saying, please stop. So we target please stop and respecting please stop. Mm-hmm. My kids do have star charts, so I tie that into their reward system if they get points for advocating and also points for respecting. The rationale there being that both kids can be reinforced at a time of conflict instead of just the like tattletaler versus person who perpetrated whatever that might look like.
Yeah.
And then modeling, I probably model like 400 times a day. Oh, that's an exaggeration, but a lot, especially for my 2-year-old. So she's really young and her sisters are older. So for example, this morning she was putting things in the backpack and my oldest went over to help her. We asked, I said, "Oh, can we help you?" She said, yes. My oldest came over to help her and she was like, "Don't help." And so a lot of times my older will back off. I'm like, nope, let's try that again. Mara, you can say, "No, thank you, Lola, I got it." And so making sure that we're not reinforcing, that the other children aren't reinforcing the habits of the younger one, in my case, which can happen sometimes.
Yeah, that's great advice. I think sibling conflict is so hard because we want to help them resolve it. But a lot of times we're trying to teach them how to do that as adults, right? We're trying to teach them how to solve their own dynamics because it happens at school too, right? Like it's not just at home, and that can transverse the different settings. So I think it's important for them to be able to handle that. Okay, so chores. Do we need them? Do we pay them for doing that? What are your thoughts on this?
I absolutely do chores. My kids start having chores at like 18 months. And the rationale there is more errorless teaching. So for example, 18 months, my kids can like start to walk. So they'll put their plastic plate in the dishwasher, or they will hang their backpack up, or whatever that looks like. And the idea is that if we start these habits earlier, they will be more ingrained versus if I waited till she was 6 and I said, "Oh, now you're old enough to put it in the dishwasher." I have for, 4 years reinforced, "Oh, it goes in the sink, it goes in the sink, it goes in the sink." And I'm going to have to, it's called response interrupt. I'm going to have to reteach a skill. So if you teach it in whatever stage is appropriate, obviously I'm not like, spray it, scrub it down and put it in the dishwasher. She sort of just chucks it in there at 18 months. Okay, great. Mm-hmm. And now when she gets a little bit older, this is where it goes, and working our way up. I personally don't do allowance for chores. I do think it's part of like the greater good of the family. However, I will reinforce, especially if I see chores done like spontaneously. So they have their star charts and they can earn with things like that.
Yeah. What do you do for rewards for star charts? What do you think? Is there like a certain number they're trying for, or how does that work?
So I use that intermittent reinforcement, that random reinforcement. So stars are never earned on a 1-to-1 basis. The behaviors we target on their star charts vary from chores, like putting their clothes in the hamper, putting their shoes on the stairs, to more behavioral, like respectfully disagreeing or saying please stop, or whatever that might look like. And so my children need 50 stars. And the reason we use intermittent reinforcement is that it varies, right? Sometimes times when things are not in a great place, we're giving a lot more stars and we're really focusing on changing the behavior. When things are a little bit better, we back off. So they need 50 stars. And when they get to their last row, they then pick what they're working for. That being said, when they were younger, they would pick it before we ever even began. So like we had that item, the immediacy of the reinforcement is important. So I'm intentional about when that last star is earned. For the star charts, they earn things like nail polish or maybe getting their nails done or a little crossbody bag from Amazon. Usually it's a couple of bucks, nothing too crazy.
Yeah. Okay. So lying, that's another thing that parents ask me a lot about. How do we stop it?
Right. So it depends on the function of the lie. There's usually two different types of lies. One, to escape a consequence or punishment, or two, to get that attention. So for the attention seeking lies of like, oh my God, I had 12 hamburgers at lunch, we can get really sucked into like, no, you didn't. You need to tell the truth. And instead, I would really focus on, I have a story to tell you. So if our child starts to exaggerate because they clearly want that attention, say like, I love when you tell stories. Go ahead and tell me a story, or have them model, can I tell you a story? The other function is escape. So I'm going to lie because I don't want to get in trouble. When that happens, we have to make telling the truth more reinforcing than avoiding the punishment is reinforcing, I guess. In my home, we do something called the 5-minute rule, which is they can ask for 5 minutes at any point and they can air any grievances or admit to any wrongdoings, and it invites a calm discussion. Yes, I do think there should always be calm discussions, but it's sort of this extra layer that they kind of gives them that expected response we're talking about. And they utilize it a lot. And usually it's for like silly things. Like my daughter came in the house the other day. They'd been in the car a minute or two before me. And she said, oh, I need a paper towel for my nose. I was like, oh, just like grab a tissue. She's like, oh, I need a paper towel. And I said, do you need 5 minutes? And she was like, yeah, I spilled your coffee. And I was like, okay, well, let's just get some paper towels then and let's go clean it up. But I want to make that more reinforcing. So, I mean, not that I would have been mad about the coffee in general, but at least it is like giving her a safe space to say, hey, I screwed up. How can we fix it? And it doesn't mean no consequences, but the consequences are usually related to like a restorative consequence or how to fix the problem that occurred.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Okay, so we're going to kind of transition. Toddlers aren't really into the lying part, but they are into like the spitting and the hitting part. Tell me, how do you suggest parents solving that?
Yeah, so two things, function and replacement behavior. So my youngest came home from a weekend with grandpa and learned to do like those raspberries, like, and she was doing them all the time and driving me bonkers. And so, you know, and I'm very guilty of like, stop that, don't do that, all those things. But then once I realized they're not working, I put my behavior analyst hat on. So for her, I worked on a replacement behavior, said, oh my gosh, you can blow kisses. And so we transitioned to blowing kisses and it sort of went away. In terms of the like hitting or anything like that, we would want to know the function of the behavior. Are they hitting because they want access to the toy? Are they hitting because you're too close and they want you to get away? A lot of times people will say, oh, he hit because he was mad, which is fair, but what function was happening? Like what happened when he was mad? What did that mean? You backed up and said, you're mad, I'll give you space. So we need to determine the function and then model that replacement behavior. So they are mad and you see them, you know, cock their hand back, maybe saying, oh, it seems like you need some space. You can say to me, space, please. And then they say that and you immediately give that space. So trying to figure out, you know, what they need and how to get their needs met in a more appropriate manner.
Yeah. What if it's like a sibling? Like, let's say they're hitting their sibling and maybe it is about space or maybe it is about a toy. How do you help the sibling to model that behavior? Because that's a little harder.
Yeah. So I would probably go in and role play. So this is, I think, is so important. So let's say the two siblings are arguing over a toy and the sibling hits for access to the toy. Our gut is usually to remove access, which is appropriate. The function's access, remove the access. Okay. But I would then bring it out. I would set a timer for 3 to 5 minutes and then bring that toy back out and role play. Like, what do we do? You can say, can I have a turn, please? The other sibling can say in 5 minutes, like whatever that looks like, and facilitate that conversation. So we have an opportunity to practice it the right way to ideally generalize that to the next conflict.
Yeah. Okay. So this next question I love because this is something that's hard for me at my house, but how do we get kids to bed on time? Like, what do you think that, yeah, it's hard because there's so many things, right? And so many humans.
Totally. So I actually just posted about this the other day, but My husband and I switch off and we do bedtime for all three at the same time. So between 7 and 7:30 after dinner, we have a pretty strict bedtime routine, baths and shower, hair, teeth, books, and bed. And so we read one book together. My oldest can read, so she and I will popcorn read. My middle's learning to read, so she'll, find certain words. My youngest, counts the animals or finds the common character or whatever that is so that we read one book. And then we do like individual time together. My kids have Alexas in their room, and you can set them for certain times. So their Alexas turn off for the youngers. They share a room at 7:30 for the older at 8. So then that's their individual time. But I mean, it's never too late to start, but the earlier you start, the better. The really consistent routine, the really consistent responding. If you find your child has a lot of like avoiding or delay tactics, I need a drink, I need the bathroom, I need whatever, trying to build that in proactively into that routine. So like, okay, I'm going to set our 5-minute timer, get your water, brush your hair, get your stuffy, whatever that looks like. And when the timer goes off, then like, that's it, we're on to bed. It's tough to do, but the more consistent you can be about it, the quicker it will fall into place.
Yeah. Okay. So next question is, how do we respond to kids not listening? So we're asking them to do something or telling them to do something and they are not listening.
So let's be mindful of the function. This happened with my oldest a lot. I would call her name. And then finally one day she was like, I don't answer because you're going to make me stop doing what I'm doing. So proactively, I built in, like, if you respond to me, I, in general, will try to give you a few minutes. So again, proactively being like, hey, in the next 10 minutes, I need you to do this. Or when you're done with this, please do that sort of thing. And just building in kind of that natural reinforcement, but also making eye contact, having them repeat the question back to you, all of that sort of stuff can be helpful as well.
Yeah, great advice. Okay, what are your thoughts on timeout?
So timeouts are super effective, but it doesn't need to be the old school, like go sit on the stairs for 3 to 5 minutes. A timeout is really a timeout usually for access-based or attention-based requests. So a timeout from the person or the activity. And so that might mean, right, removing the toy, removing them from the room, or being like, seems like you're having a hard time right now. The biggest thing with timeout is outlining how to get access or attention back appropriately. So again, doesn't need to be set a 3-minute timer. I will know you're ready to talk to me when you have picked up the toy you threw or whatever that might look.
Yeah. And then what do you want parents to take away from this conversation? We've downloaded a lot of helpful things. What do you want them to take away?
I think function replacement behavior would be the biggest. When you're stuck with your kid in a moment, I really want you to think, what do I want them to do right now? And that really should be something. So I was working with a family the other day and the dad was like, she was taking a toy car and slamming it into like the window. And I said, okay, what did you want her to do? And I said, and you can't say, don't slam the car. And he was like, I don't know then. I was like, okay, so did you want her to play with the car on the ground? Did you want her to find a different activity? Did you want her to go through the door? Like, figure out what you want them to do instead and model that and create opportunities to practice that skill.
Yeah, that's great. And I think the practicing part is so key, right? Like, we've got to go back and teach them how we want them to do it. So just stopping the behavior isn't enough because we haven't changed anything. We just stopped that for this time. But ultimately, I don't know about you, but like, I would love to not have to do the same conversation 27 times if that's possible. And a lot of times modeling is helpful in that.
Yeah,
capacity.
creating those opportunities to practice is so important. So like even with my youngest was sharing, we would sit outside, we would throw for the dog and it'd be like, mommy's turn, your turn, over and over and over, so that we have 25 repetitions of it being successful. Otherwise, we just are repeating the negative behavior, which is getting more reinforced because it keeps happening, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Well, this has been so enlightening. Thank you so much, Mandy, for your time today. It has been great.
Well, thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you so much for joining us again, Mandy. It was a great episode. We cannot wait to have you back again soon. So Mandy, as you know, is a special education teacher and she has her BCBA and she is breaking down these behaviors like a pro. And I would encourage you to find her on Instagram and follow her for all of her tips. She has so many videos and a lot of other advice to put out there. And I just want to say that I learned some things and I love these tools and thinking about reinforcement and what I'm reinforcing or intermittently reinforcing at my house and being just conscious of that. I know it's hard, but I think we can all do one thing. And I think that's the important part to take away is what one thing did Mandy say that you really want to take away, and then applying that to your life and talking with your kids about it. It's okay for us to be honest with our kids about learning new tools. That's such an important part because we want them to know that we can grow and change and become better parents. So with that, I will say thank you. Have a fantastic day. Please remember to subscribe and rate our show. Follow us on Facebook and Instagram and YouTube. And also send us your requests at accidentalexperts@gmail.com. Thank you so much for your time today. Have a fantastic day. Some words from our legal team.
The information presented in this podcast is not intended or implied to be a substitute for appropriate professional advice, diagnosis, or treatment. All content, including text, graphics, images, and information contained on or available through this podcast, is for general information purposes only. This podcast makes no representations and assumes no responsibility for the accuracy or information on or available through this podcast, and such information is subject to change without notice. You are encouraged to confirm any information obtained through this program with other sources and review all information regarding any condition or treatment with the appropriate professionals.
What we're saying is, yes, I am a real therapist, but I'm not your therapist.